Story 1. A dark night of unseen terrors. I used to believe the most terrifying nights were the ones when the storm rattled the windows and thunder split the sky. At least then, you could point to the noise, to the flashes, and say, that's what frightened me. But the night I'm about to tell you about was different. The storm outside was fierce. Yes, but the real terror came from what I couldn't see, what crept just beyond the reach of the lightning. It was late September when I drove out to my grandfather's cabin, tucked away in a stretch of woodland that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The road had narrowed to dirt long before I reached the clearing, and by then the rain had already begun to fall in sheets. Every few seconds, my headlights caught branches bending like brittle arms in the wind. The trees themselves groaned and swayed as though warning me to turn back. Inside the cabin, it was dark and musty, the air heavy with the scent of damp wood and mold. I lit an old oil lamp because the power was out, a common problem whenever the storms rolled through. The lamp's glow stretched only a few feet around me, leaving the corners in heavy shadow. That was when I first heard it, a tapping faint and irregular, like fingernails against glass. I froze, holding my breath. The rain lashed at the windows, yes, but this sound was sharper, more deliberate. I told myself it had to be branches blown against the glass. Yet when I moved to the front window, nothing touched it. The sound stopped only to start again behind me, at the kitchen window. That was the first moment I realized I wasn't alone. I didn't want to admit it. Instead, I tried distracting myself by unpacking. I set my bag by the cot, unfolded a blanket, and listened to the wind push at the cabin's roof. But then came the smell. Faint at first, something metallic, coppery, like old pennies left out in the rain, blood. The storm raged harder, the trees shrieking like banshees in the distance. But inside the cabin, silence pressed down between those sharp taps and the thick, iron scent. I checked the door twice, making sure the deadbolt was latched, and sat by the lamp, straining my ears. That's when the scratching began. Not from the window this time, from beneath the floorboards. At first it was faint, like claws dragging lightly against wood. Then, a sudden thump asterisk beneath my feet. My heart pounded as I stumbled back. The old wooden planks rattled as though something or someone was shifting below, crawling in the crawl space that barely had enough room for an animal. I whispered to myself, it's just raccoons. But I didn't believe it. Another thump, then silence. The silence lasted too long, too heavy, like something holding its breath with me. When the lamp sputtered and dimmed, my stomach dropped. I grabbed the box of matches, fumbling as my hands shook. The shadows seemed to move in the corners, stretching taller, sharper, as the light wavered. For a moment, I swore I saw a hand press against the floorboard from below, 5 long fingers pushing up against the wood before vanishing. I told myself to leave, to grab the keys, open the door, and run into the storm. But when I turned to the door, I froze. The latch was undone. The deadbolt I had checked twice now hung loose, as if someone had carefully slid it back. Rain sprayed inward from the gap where the wind pried the door open. But what truly made my blood run cold wasn't the door itself. It was the wet footprints leading inward. They weren't mine. Bare feet, narrow and long, glistening with rainwater, tracked from the threshold across the cabin floor. They stopped right in front of the cot where my bag still sat. I stared at them, too afraid to move, my heart hammering so loudly I thought it would give me away. Then, a whisper cut through the storm, so soft I wasn't sure it was real.
You shouldn't be here.
The voice didn't come from outside. It came from inside the cabin. My chest tightened as I spun, the lamplight trembling with me. No one stood there, just shadows stacked in the corners, waiting. I grabbed the lamp and held it high, but the glow only reached so far. The smell of blood thickened. I covered my mouth, gagging, and then I heard it again. The scratching, not from beneath the floorboards this time, from the walls. I don't remember blowing out the lamp. I don't remember deciding to hide beneath the blanket like a child. But that's where I ended up, every nerve screaming, every sound amplified by the storm. Somewhere in the blackness, I heard slow breathing, not mine, not human. It grew closer until I felt warm condensation against the blanket, like something enormous exhaling inches from my face. My body locked in terror. I wanted to scream, to move, but I stayed frozen. Then came the hand. It pressed against the blanket, directly over my chest. Heavy, long fingers spread wide. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The smell of rot filled my nose. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. Final hook, chilling close. When I dared to look, the storm had quieted. The door was shut again, the footprints gone. But on the floorboards, scratched deep into the wood, was a single message. I'll come back when the lights go out again.